I posted a true stalker story online and my stalker read it. I never would have thought that something as simple as sharing my experiences on the internet would lead to such a terrifying nightmare. But that's exactly what happened when I posted a true stalker story online and my stalker read it. I've always been interested in the paranormal, the unexplainable, the things that go bump in the night. So when I stumbled upon a forum dedicated to sharing ghost stories and personal experiences with stalkers, I couldn't resist joining in on the conversations. I eagerly shared my own story detailing the events that had haunted me for years. It all started when I was in college. I lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, surrounded by trees and darkness. It was the perfect setting for a horror movie, but I didn't mind. At least, not until the stalking began. It started off innocently enough. I would come home from classes to find my things slightly moved around or my window open, even though I distinctly remembered closing and locking it. I brushed it off as my own forgetfulness or perhaps just a curious raccoon. But as time went on, things escalated. I would hear noises in the middle of the night, like someone was walking around in my apartment. I would find new scratches on my door as if someone had been trying to pick the lock. And then the messages started. At first, they were just little notes left around my apartment. They would say things like "you're beautiful" or "I'm always watching." I tried to convince myself that it was just a creepy prank by one of my friends, but deep down I knew it was something more sinister. One day, I came home to find a message scrawled on my bathroom mirror in red lipstick. It read, "I'll never let you go." That's when I knew I was dealing with a stalker. I called the police, but without any physical evidence, they couldn't do much. I was terrified, but I refused to let the stalker control my life. I installed security cameras and learned self-defense techniques. I even considered moving out, but the thought of my stalker potentially following me to a new location was too much to bear. That's when I started to notice something strange. Every time I shared my experiences with friends or family, the stalker would strike again. It was as if they were reading my thoughts and trying to prove that they were always one step ahead of me. So, I turned to the internet for help. I found the forum and began to share my story with complete strangers. It was a relief to finally have an outlet to express my fears and frustrations. But little did I know, my stalker was lurking in the shadows of the internet as well. After sharing my story on the forum, I started receiving anonymous private messages. At first, they were just words of encouragement, telling me to stay strong and that my stalker would eventually get tired and move on. But as time went on, the messages became more personal and chilling. The stalker knew details about my daily routines, my friends, and even my family. They taunted me with their knowledge, leaving me feeling like I was being watched at all times. I started to question my own sanity, wondering if I was just being paranoid or if there really was someone out there stalking me. Things took a turn for the worse when I woke up one morning to find that all of my security cameras had been disabled. The footage showed a hooded figure entering my apartment and destroying the cameras. I was devastated and terrified, realizing that my stalker was not only real but incredibly skilled at evading detection. But it was the next message that sent shivers down my spine. It was a video of me sleeping, taken from my own bedroom. The stalker was real, they had been inside my apartment, and they had been watching me this entire time. I was living in a real-life horror movie, and there didn't seem to be an escape. Every time I tried to reach out for help, the stalker would retaliate in some way. I was constantly on edge, constantly afraid of what they might do next. And then they started appearing in my dreams. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, after having a nightmare where the stalker would be chasing me. But these dreams felt all too real, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the stalker was somehow manipulating them. I was no longer just a victim of a stalker, I was a prisoner in my own mind. They had invaded my thoughts, my dreams, and my every waking moment. It was a living nightmare, and I didn't know how much more I could take. But then something happened that changed everything. I received a message from the stalker, but this time it wasn't threatening. It simply said, "I've been watching you for a long time and I know what you're going through. I can help you." I was skeptical, to say the least. How could my stalker possibly help me? But I was desperate, and so I responded. That's when I found out the truth. The stalker was actually someone who had been in my life for a long time. Someone I had trusted. They had been infatuated with me since college, and when I moved to this apartment, they saw it as an opportunity to get closer to me. They knew my routines, my habits, and my deepest fears. They had been stalking me all along, but they claimed it was out of love. They told me that they had been reading my posts on the forum, and it broke their heart to see how terrified I was. They wanted to make me feel safe again, to show me that they were just misunderstood. They promised to leave me alone if I agreed to meet with them in person. I was torn. On one hand, I was frightened and didn't want anything to do with my stalker. But on the other hand, a small part of me wanted to believe that they could change, that they could be a normal person and leave me alone. In the end, I decided to meet with them. I wasn't for the shock of my life when I saw their face for the first time. It was someone that I trusted, someone that I had been in a relationship with years ago. I never would have guessed that they were capable of such twisted behavior. But as we talked, I started to see things from their perspective. They had been hurt when I ended things between us, and they couldn't let go. They thought that by stalking me, they were showing me how much they loved me. It was a sick and twisted kind of love, but it was still love in their eyes. I was torn between feeling sorry for them and being terrified of them. I realized that this was a dangerous obsession that could go on forever if I didn't put an end to it. I made the painful decision to cut all ties with them and get a restraining order. The following weeks were tense and paranoid. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for my stalker to retaliate. But slowly, the messages and notes stopped coming. The noises in the night ceased, and I started to feel like I could finally breathe again. Years have passed since that night, and I've tried to move on from the traumatic experience. But every now and then, I'll receive a message or a note reminding me that my stalker is still out there, watching, waiting. I may have escaped my stalker's clutches, but I'll never truly be free from the nightmare they inflicted on me. And every time I think about sharing my story, I'll always wonder if they're reading it, waiting for their next opportunity to strike.